Forward! March! Fantastic. All right, here we go. I'm going to take you guys back to 1765. All right, I'm going to try to keep this very brief, but I want you guys to realize why we're here, why we're doing this, and why this day is so important, okay? Back in 1765, right, the British had just came off the 7 Years' War and the French and Indian War and all that crap, and they were highly in debt and they needed money, right? It costs money to field troops, it costs money for supplies and housing and stuff like that. So British Parliament thought, hey, you know what? We're going to tax the colonists, right? Now, there was previous taxes going on, but the real starting point was the Stamp Act of 1765. The Stamp Act of 1765 was an act of Parliament that imposed direct taxes on the colonies on printed materials like legal documents, magazines, playing cards, right? And what was that tax going to pay for? British troops, right? They had no consent, they were just taxed, right? This is stuff they needed, and they were taxed on it, right? Taxation without representation. Stamp Act was the first significant joint colonial response to any British measure, right? This was the spark that started it all right? We're going to go down later on that year, the Quartering Act, which required the colonists to supply and house the British Army with food and supplies at the colonists' expense. Pretty much sucks, huh? Right? You don't get a choice. Hey, these dudes are, you guys are going to pay for these dudes to live, and you have no say about it. All right. The Townshend Acts of 1767 placed an indirect tax on glass, lead, paints, paper, and tea, right? The problem with that was these items weren't available in the States. They weren't made from the States. They had to be imported. So guess what? The stuff that you needed to live and do your job and work were taxed. What the freak, man, right? Just by the colonists. All right? And what started as a revenue generator, they said, you know what? We got a better idea. We're going to take the taxes collected from the Townshend Acts, and we're going to pay the local governors and judges to favor British laws. Right? Does that sound kind of like what's happening now? Right?
Thanks, dude.
Pretty crazy, right? Well, the colonists pushed back and they protested the laws, right? They said this is bullshit, right? Hey, do something about it. March 1770, most of the Townshend Acts were repealed. Anybody know what happened on March 5th of 1770? Boston Massacre. Everybody know what happened at the Boston Massacre? Right? I'll try to keep it simple. British soldiers shot and killed several people under attack of a mob. They fired into a crowd without orders, instantly killing 3 people and wounding others. Right? We're talking about a standing army that's in your town, that's in your city, that you don't want them to be there, and they're killing people. Right? You're paying taxes to their king so they could be there. Bullshit. Right? After the Townshend Acts, most of them were repealed, they still needed to get revenue. So then they came up with the Tea Act. Everybody knows what the Tea Act was, right? The British East India Tea Company was in fear of going bankrupt, right? So British Parliament had a grand idea to save the company and tax the colonists at the same time, right? Perfect. So what they did was they passed laws to make duty-free export from London to the colonies, right? They made tea cheaper with the tax than smuggled tea that was brought in. So, hey, you're paying cheaper tea, right? What's wrong with that? The taxes you are paying are still going to British armies and paying for British rule to fund corrupt leaders, right? Bullshit, right? Anybody know what happened? Well, the colonists began revolting. Ships that arrived in harbors, you had to pay for the tea that was on that ship. You had to pay for it. Plain and simple. Hey, we got 30 chests of tea. Well, we don't drink that much tea. Tough shit. Pay us for the tea. We don't drink that much tea. pay for the tea. So what did the colonists do? Ships came in the harbor, they let them rot. Right? Ships that came in, they tried to send them back. They refused it. What happens next? Everybody should know what happens next, right? The Boston Tea Party. Colonists got so pissed off about what was happening that a group of men dressed as Mohican Indians boarded the 3 ships that had tea on it. And over the course of 3 hours, they dumped 342 chests of tea into the water. Right? Political protest at its best. They ain't buying your tea, and as a matter of fact, we're going to throw it over the thing, throw it into the bay, into the harbor, and we're going to watch it float to the bottom. All right, 1774. I'm going to try and make this real quick. I understand. I know you guys want to shoot. Coercive Acts of 1774 was a direct punishment to the Boston Tea Party. All right? British Parliament shut down the Boston port and said, we ain't opening it up. You guys aren't getting your goods and services, your leads, paper, paint, glass, all that shit that you guys can't live without until you pay for the tea that you guys threw over the end. Right? Smack in the face. Okay, no problem. Right? A couple other acts that went into effect there. That was most important, I think. October 20th of 1774, the First Continental Congress convenes to address the coercive acts. Right? They got together and said, you know what? They imposed an immediate ban on British tea and import of any consumable goods from Britain. 1775, British Parliament declared that Massachusetts is to be a state of rebellion and enforced the blockade of the colony. That's it. It started. This is it. The king said they've gone too far. They're traitors. Right? April 14th, 1775. The British Commander-in-Chief, Thomas Gage, receives orders to disarm the local militaries. Let that sink in. Receives order from the king to disarm the colonists. Right? Word got out. Thomas Gage's name is important. Word got out, right? And on the evening of April 18th, 1775, does anybody know what happened? Paul Revere's midnight ride, right? He got dispatched by Joseph Warren to ride to Concord and tell John Hancock and Samuel Adams that the British are coming to get us, right? Mount up. Does anybody know how the colonists got their information that the British were organizing a disarmament of the colonies?
One if by land, two if by sea.
But before that, how'd they know that was coming? How'd they know?
Cell phone.
Very close. Here it is. Back then there were 3 forms, well actually now there's 3 forms of telecommunication, ready? There's telephone, telegraph, and telewoman. Right? The woman who spilled the beans was none other than Margaret Gage, Thomas Gage's wife. Tipped the colonists off that they're coming to get them. How about that? How about that? All right? April 19th, 1775, the British marches into Lexington to come disarm the militia. Right? This is the first military engagement of the war. Right? And it's also the shot heard around the world, right? That's what started it right here. Shots fired, right? The militia dispersed. Redcoats marched past Lexington to Concord to go grab the munitions and the firearms from the militia. And who knows what happens? The militiamen, knowing that this was going to happen, they grouped up together and they fought back. They fought back. They fought back against the biggest, most organized, most well-funded army in the world at that time. And they pushed them back all the way to the harbor. And they said, nope, you are not ruling us anymore. This is it. We've had it. Right? Stop imposing your taxes on us. Right? Stop being crooked. Stop messing with us. We want to be a free state. All right? Does that make sense? I'm getting goosebumps, guys. War goes on for a year. right? War goes on for a year. And on July 2nd, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was passed by the Second Continental Congress, with John Hancock as the president. The Declaration announced that the 13 colonies then at war with the Kingdom of Great Britain would regard themselves as 13 independent, sovereign states no longer under British rule. It was ratified 2 days later on July 4th, and that's where we get the date of July 4th, but it was passed on the 2nd, right? So that's how we kind of get here today, right? Like I said, we ain't taking your shit. Stop passing bullshit laws. Stop making us pay for shit, right? That we don't need to be paying for. Affordable Care Act, right? John Adams wrote, after they passed the Declaration of Independence on July 2nd, John Adams wrote, "The second day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the Day of Deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of the continent to the other. From this time forward, forevermore." If that doesn't give you chills, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, and if that doesn't make you proud to be an American, you look at yourself in the mirror and give yourself a counseling session. All right? Everybody stand by. Tune, attend, hut! About